So last month we learned that the Just for Laughs Festival, would be canceled for 2024. They announced they'd filed for creditor protection in a bid to avoid bankruptcy. Now a month later, Just for Laughs has hit the auction block, basically. We've learned of 15 potential buyers stepping forward, vying for that winning bid to own Just for Laughs. One of those potential new owners joins us now. Ashkan Karbasfrooshan is the founder of WatchMojo, one of the biggest YouTube channels out there, based right here in Montreal. Ash, welcome back to the program.
You're very good, Elias. I like how you set that up. Good call.
Well, thank you very much, Ash. That is part of what I do here. So listen, the last time you were on was to discuss the last time you tried to buy Just for Laughs. You tried this in 2018 when it was up for sale. Why take another kick at the can here?
Okay, well, just a little fact check. No, what happened was ICM, the LA-based talent agency, had already secured, they had already bought the business, and then I think they realized that they needed a 51% partner, and then subsequent to them having already owned the asset, we just talked to them for a few months, and we were in it, we're out of it, and as I said, I think they did the wise thing by going with Evenco, because you got to run the festival. They run the Jazz Fest, and then Bell Media, which I know owns CJD, which is like a broadcaster. So I thought it was I understood their decision. Look, this time, frankly, they had a responsibility because of the CISP process, like sale and investment solicitation process, after filing for bankruptcy to find a buyer. As I said, it wasn't like a savior complex. It wasn't like this time. There was even less ego and pride, and we all have that. I mean, I thought 5 years ago it was an interesting business idea. WatchMojo being a digital media entertainment, producing content, a lot of distribution. I felt for us to diversify and get into events and expand into comedy was smart on paper. With the passage of time, you get a bit wiser. You realize, that's a tough business, and if that so-called dream team could not do it, then why should we? But as an entrepreneur, you do have a responsibility not just to shareholders and your employees, but also to your clients, but also to the community. And I didn't really want it to die, not knowing if anybody would step up, because there's like $50+ million of that. And I do want to clarify that, most of the information I share on these interviews are based on public information or things that I knew. I would obviously not say, I saw this in the data room, so let me talk about it. Mm-hmm. But this time, I did say last time that if there was a group again, as much as that's thorny, but if there was a group and we could play a part, I would be open to it. But definitely I did not have the same level of interest, because it was a bad situation that frankly was made worse, partly because of the pandemic, but also just because of, that 3 owners is too many owners for most businesses.
Well, so a couple of things here, right? One, I think you're bang on. When you look at who owned Just for Laughs, you have Group Say Evenco, you have Bell, obviously, as you mentioned, owner of this station as well, and then you have the agency that has such connections to talent. It seemed like the perfect scenario, right? So you do have to ask the question: if they can't get this working, who can? But then on the other end, Ash, and what I'd like your comment on, sometimes assets become so devalued, they actually are really interesting opportunities. Is that what's happening here with Just for Laughs? Is now, because of all this, the brand has lost so much value that it's a good deal to get in on?
Well, yeah, I mean, look, the cost is what or price is ultimately what somebody's going to pay for it. Value is like what you ultimately get in terms of like a safety net and whatnot. But I think the bigger issue is the world has changed after COVID, but just, with social, all things we've discussed, that I don't really know what the upside of that is. But it is also very messy, because even though this was a business that just a few years ago was valued at $65 million, it also had about $50 million of debt. So you're talking about an enterprise value in theory on paper of over $150 million. And yeah, so if there are parties, whether it's an individual, whether it's a family office, whether it's another media company, and they're like, wow, we could scoop this up for random, $1 million, $5 million, $10 million, $12 million, whatever that number is, they're going to be compelled. And like myself, if you're a big media company, you have an obligation. You have an obligation to take a look and see, hey, could we take this and turn it around? But if you're going to be intellectually honest, how many people and groups could really own the whole thing, which is at the end of the day, a bilingual, 2 festivals with a media side that ultimately was not maximized in value. And if Evenco and Bell and ICM, CAA could not pull it off, what is that Venn diagram of people that could do it? But I think some of it was the multiple owners, right? I mean, again, I'm not relying on any private info, just logically, if you're like Evenco and you own Jazz Festival and you get a sponsorship for Coca-Cola and you could kind of book 100% of that revenue, I think ultimately maybe this was doomed from the get-go, where internally would an Evenco put as much resources behind something that they own a quarter or a third or whatever that number is. Psychology comes into play. And then, I might have been interested in this business or in parts of it, but I'm like, well, I'm not going to run a festival. What am I going to go do? Fight for permits and move orange cones so people could park? It's a bit of a messy thing. And that's why in this process, and again, this was disclosed publicly, they really presented it as a portfolio of assets, including the brand, the IP, the French side, the English side, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm not surprised that they reached out, again, as mentioned in the La Presse article, to 130 parties, and we were one of them. And the truth is 15 parties signed the NDA, and we were one of them. Obviously, I don't know how many parties submitted an offer, but I think that just relying on what was said in the articles, when you look at it, it's not obvious. Even if there might be value, it's like, okay, I run and I chase after a dog, I catch the dog. Oh, great, it now bit my face. You have to be careful with chess ball.
Okay, so let me ask you this way, because one of the things brought up in reporting this week is that maybe the best path forward is to break up the company. You mentioned French Festival, English Festival, and then the IP, the intellectual property here. And I think for you, we're with Ashkan Karbasfrooshan, founder of WatchMojo. For someone like you, Ash, it would seem to me it's that IP and the name Just for Laughs, so much about using YouTube and other platforms, right? Maybe that's the match made in heaven, is taking Just for Laughs and bringing them into this content era online.
I come on this show and you want to talk about separation. I'm kidding. So look, you're right, and that is an option. But let me throw this, and I don't mean to plug something, but today at 2:30 I'm going to chat with Joey Elias just about the comedy, how comedy's changed the festival. You could just follow that on my Twitter if you want. It's just Twitter at Ashkan. But let me throw this crazy idea that I was going to run by him. Well, what's stopping us? Why do you need the festival and why do you need the brand? Why not I could launch a 24-hour festival starting from Australia, pick any day, saying that this year there's no Just for Laughs. So to fill that void, Netflix is May 1 to May 12th, I think, in LA.
Yeah.
But what's stopping me from just saying July 1st, anybody that is an aspiring comedian, established or emerging, 24 comedians, 24 hours around the world, starting in Sydney and then moving across the world through, Asia, Europe, Africa, finishing in LA or Hawaii. I could do that. Why do I need the Just for Laughs festival? And any brand. That's my point. Even WatchMojo, even CJD. People have to understand brands, the generations change. A few years ago, my kids were hooked on Snap. Now it's TikTok, and those are platforms. But even brands, even WatchMojo, a lot of people know us and it's great, but you can't have an ego and a big head about this. Brands are fluid. We discussed it. The best comedians are not going to give their content to Just for Laughs. So Just for Laughs became kind of, sadly, this box. It's like a soapbox. You could stand on it and do your spiel, your act, but what's inside the box in terms of IP and all that? There's not that much. And so could we have been interested in the gags? Sure. But again, that's a legacy catalog that for me, I was like, okay, it's like you've heard the story of the fisherman, the Mexican fisherman. You could chase 25 things, but you have to ask yourself why. Why am I doing this? Does it make sense? Is it ego? Is it pride? But I do think somebody's going to scoop it up. But most likely, my guess is it would be chopped up. I don't think one person is going to buy everything. I think it'll be carved up.
And would just, I don't know if you want to put some odds on this. You think you'll be, at the end of the day, you could be part of that?
I don't have an ego. If somebody feels that we could help, like I offered last time, I would totally be open. There's no dogmatic position militant. I think we can help, obviously. And I think, look, if people could roll their eyes when I say this, I think as an entrepreneur, as a member of a business community or city community, I have an obligation to help if I can as well, if it doesn't hurt my business, so to speak, right? But I think if somebody came to me and said, look, we'd love you guys to be part of it, I'd listen, but I would just be like, it has to make sense for all parties. I'm not going to do it. Yeah,
Ash, got to leave it there. But
cool.
Thanks so much for coming on. Always a pleasure talking business and entertainment with you. Thanks so much.
Likewise. Have a good one.
Ashkan Karbasfrooshan is the founder of WatchMojo.